Hello everyone, welcome back to Buried Files. Tonight we bring you 7 of the most disturbing true trucker horror stories ever shared from the endless highways, forgotten rest stops, and desolate back roads that crisscross the country. These are not campfire inventions, but first-hand confessions from drivers who live their lives in the dead hours when most of the world is asleep, and the road belongs to something else. Every account you are about to hear has been sourced from real testimonies, cross-checked where possible against police reports, local folklore, and long-haul chatter that has circulated on the CB for years. Some of these stories brush up against true crime, others hint at forces that defy rational explanation. But all of them come from people with nothing to gain by inventing what they saw. If you value slow burn, authentic horror that lingers long after the screen goes dark, subscribe to Buried Files and turn on all notifications so you never miss our next descent into the unknown. When you are finished listening, share your own experiences from the road or late-night encounters in the comments below, because your stories may be the next case we dig into. Now settle in as we roll into the long, dark stretches of highway, where truckers discover that some loads are heavier than they appear, and some things out there do not want to be passed. I am not proud of what I did that night. I tell myself I did enough, that I made the right choice, that calling it in was better than doing nothing at all. But when I close my eyes, I still hear the knocking, steady as a heartbeat against thin metal. And I see his eyes when he finally turned and looked at me. That is what I live with now, mile after mile. My name is George, and I have been driving long haul for over a decade. I have seen wrecks that turned steel into folded paper. I have watched cars drift across 3 lanes like they were half asleep. And I have heard more lies over a counter at a truck stop than most people hear in their entire lives. Nothing ever followed me into my sleep until that night at the 4th bank on a lonely strip of interstate, just off exit 19. It was the kind of run dispatch loves to give to people who never say no. 4 overnight cash routes, all timed so tight that if you lost 10 minutes at each stop, you were already late. I did not like those runs. Too many eyes on you, too many people guessing what you had in the trailer. But the money was good, and my bills did not care that I preferred hauling dry grocery loads. By the time I rolled into the last bank lot, my clock read 12:17 in the morning. The street was almost empty, a couple of sodium vapor lights buzzing over the sidewalk and the blue glow of the ATM corner reflecting in the glass. The branch sat at the edge of one of those forgotten downtowns, nothing but closed shops, pawn signs, and bars with flickering neon. I did a slow loop of the lot like I always do, scanning the shadows, checking for anyone loitering around the ATM. The only other vehicle there was another tractor trailer parked along the far fence line, engine idling low. The rig had no company logo I recognized, just a plain white box and a cab that looked like it had not been washed in months. The curtains inside the sleeper were half drawn, a thin strip of darkness visible between them. The headlights were off, but the motor's rumble sat in my chest as I passed, a dull, constant vibration. I remember thinking it was odd. Someone else was running a graveyard shift to a small town bank like this. Then I told myself to mind my own business. Out here, minding your own business is not just a habit, it is survival. I backed my truck up to the service entrance, killed the lights, and let the engine idle. The security company wanted quick turnarounds. In, unload the locked containers, out, no lingering, no smoke breaks, no walks around the block. The guard inside buzzed me through the rear access door, barely glancing at my ID. His eyes were ringed with red, like he had not slept properly in weeks. We did not say much. Those places always feel too quiet, like the money is soaking up all the sound. I rolled the first cart down the short hallway, signed what needed signing, swapped out the sealed boxes for the empties, and headed back toward the door. On my second trip, I noticed it. 3 knocks. Muffled, dull, from somewhere beyond the wall behind the teller area. 3 slow, even taps, like someone rapping with their knuckles on the inside of a box. I stopped in the middle of the hallway, hands still on the cart. The guard glanced up from his clipboard. "You hear that?" I asked. He frowned, head tipped to the side. Silence. Just the faint hum of the building's air system and the soft click of fluorescent lights. "Hear what?" he said. I hesitated. I did not want to sound jumpy. "Nothing. Thought I heard something shift in the vault." He shrugged. "Place settles. Cameras would go off if anything was wrong." That was true, or at least it was the answer he was paid to give. I finished the run, pushing the weight of money that was not mine across waxed tile. The whole time, the back of my neck prickled, waiting for that sound again. It did not come. When the last cart was empty and the paperwork was done, he buzzed me back out into the night. The parking lot air felt colder than it should, the kind that bites right through your jacket. My truck idled where I had left it, a comforting familiar shape between me and the rest of the darkness. Across the lot, the other rig still sat by the fence, engine rumbling, exhaust breathing out in steady white plumes. I was halfway to my cab when I heard it again. 3 knocks. This time there was no wall between us. It came from my right, from the direction of the other truck. 3 dull thuds against metal, followed by a pause long enough to make my heart start racing. I told myself it was freight shift. I told myself it could have been anything, a pallet tipping, a poorly strapped crate rocking in place. I took another step toward my cab. The 3 knocks came again. Louder, more deliberate. You can tell when someone is hitting a surface on purpose. There is rhythm to it, intention. It came from the back of the unmarked trailer. I stopped again, hand on my door handle, trying to decide how much I really wanted to know. I have heard all the stories about what people haul when nobody's asking questions. Drugs, weapons, sometimes worse. Human cargo is not just an urban legend. There are places where people vanish and never show up in any report. I could have climbed up into my cab, thrown it into gear, and never thought about that lot again. That is what a smarter man would have done. Instead, I found myself standing there in the cold, watching the blank white side of that trailer, waiting. "Hello?" a voice said. It was so faint at first that I thought I had imagined it. A whisper through cotton, muffled by inches of insulated steel. "Hello? Please, hey." My mouth went dry. The voice did not sound like a grown man. It sounded younger, tired, hoarse, like whoever was speaking had been at it for a long time. I forced myself to speak, glancing around the lot to make sure we were still alone. "You all right in there?" I called quietly, not wanting to draw attention from the street. Silence. Then the 3 knocks again, then clearer this time. "Is someone out there? Please, can you answer me?" My heart hammered against my ribs, hard enough to hurt. I looked at the tractor. The cab windows were too dark to see inside. The plate looked like it had been deliberately sprayed with grime. No numbers on the trailer, just a faint shadow where some decal used to be. "Hang on," I said. "Just hang on a second." I took a step toward the rear of the trailer, listening for any sign of someone in the cab. The engine kept its steady idle. No door opened, no shape moved behind the glass. The only sound was that quiet plea through metal. "They can hear you if you talk too loud," the voice whispered. "Please," before he comes back. Every instinct in me screamed to stop. Someone else's load, someone else's problem. I was a guy on a tight schedule with a certificate to sign and a family that needed my paycheck. You do not go tinkering with another driver's locks, not unless you want trouble. "Who is he?" I asked. The voice trembled. "He puts us in here. He says no one cares, that no one listens. You listened. Please, please open it." "I will not tell. I swear." I reached the doors and laid my hand flat against the cold metal. It vibrated faintly with the engines idle, the way any loaded trailer does. I imagined faces pressed up against the darkness just inches away, imagined wrists bound, imagined bruises. All the things I have seen written up in little paragraphs in the back pages of local news sites when they finally stumble into the light. I also imagined what would happen if whoever owned that rig came around the corner right then and saw me with my hands on his doors. What is going on? The voice did not come from the trailer this time. It came from behind me. I spun around so fast that I slammed my shoulder into the door handle. A man stood about 15 feet away, half in the spill of the bank's security light and half in shadow. He was taller than me by a head, wide at the shoulders, wearing a greasy denim jacket and a black cap pulled low. His beard hung heavy down to his chest, streaked with gray, and his eyes were wrong. I have met men on drugs, men drunk, men who have not slept for days. They all have a certain wildness in their gaze. This was not that. His eyes were flat, focused, like a hunter looking at an animal that had wandered into his snare. "Evening," I managed, trying to keep my voice even. "Heard something in your trailer. Thought your freight might have shifted." He stared at me for a long time without answering. In that silence, the 3 knocks came again, this time so soft it could almost have been a coincidence. His jaw clenched once. "Load is fine," he said. His voice was low, controlled. "You done here?" I nodded, suddenly aware of how exposed I was in the open lot. "Yeah, just finished. Was heading out." He took a slow step closer, eyes never leaving mine. I realized he was positioning himself between me and the rear of the trailer, as if my being within arm's reach of that lock was already too much. "Lot's full of echoes," he said. "You should not listen so hard. Might hear something you do not like." I swallowed. Maybe so. Behind him, the trailer shuddered once. Not a big movement, not the kind you see when freight actually tips, but more like something inside had hit the wall hard and then gone still. The man's eyes flicked sideways just for a fraction of a second. And in that sliver of time, I saw something crack in his expression. Not guilt, not fear, annoyance. Like a parent glancing at a child who would not stop fidgeting. "That your truck?" he asked, jerking his chin toward my rig. "Yeah." "Then you should get in it. You have places to be." I nodded again, backing away slowly, not wanting to turn my back completely until I had a few more feet between us. The whole time, the cold from the metal door was still in my palm, like my skin remembered the chill. I climbed into my cab on legs that felt strangely numb, closed the door, and locked it. For a moment, I just sat there with my hands on the wheel, engine humming under me, watching him in my side mirror. He stood there for a while, staring at my truck, then turned and walked to his own cab. The knock came one more time, sharp and panicked, right as he disappeared into the darkness. I could have left then, thrown it into drive, pulled out onto the street, and pretended the last 5 minutes had never happened. Instead, I reached for my phone. The dispatcher line for the security company had a separate option for emergencies. I hit it, gave the lot address in a low voice, and said the only thing I thought they might respond to. "There's a suspicious rig parked by the fence," I said. "Unmarked trailer. Something is not right. You might want to send someone to check it out." The operator asked if I wanted to leave my name. My eyes stayed locked on the mirror, on the shape of that white box and the shadow of the man inside his cab. "No," I said. "Just send someone quick." I pulled out of the lot after that, my heart still pounding hard enough that my foot shook on the pedal. In my mirror, I watched the bank and the other trucks shrink until the glow of their lights was swallowed by the darkness of the street. I told myself I had done something. I had called it in. I had not just walked away. But as the miles unspooled and the highway opened up ahead, that excuse started to sound thin. 2 days later, in another state, I heard the story. Drivers talk even when they should not. Someone mentioned a refrigerated trailer found abandoned behind a cheap motel, padlock cut by state police. They said there were people inside. Most of them were not moving. One of them still was. I asked questions I should not have asked, piecing together details I had no right to know. No logo on the doors. Plates so filthy it took them time to run it. One survivor hoarse from yelling and banging on the walls for hours, maybe days. They said they kept knocking. One driver told me quietly over coffee, eyes fixed on the table. Said they knew someone was out there at one point. Said they heard boots on concrete, heard a man's voice, then nothing. I did not ask where the trailer had been found. I did not ask what direction it had been headed. I did not ask what the survivors said about the man who drove it. I just nodded, finished my coffee, and went back to my truck. Now, when I pull into a lot after midnight and see another rig with no marking sitting by itself, with the engine idling and the curtains half drawn, I park farther away. I keep my eyes on my own mirrors, my own doors. I tell myself that if I hear knocking again, I will do more. I will not hesitate. But the truth is, I do not know. I remember that man's eyes, that flat, patient look. I remember the way the guard did not hear the first set of knocks at all. I remember the survivor's words floating around the driver's room like cigarette smoke. We kept knocking. Someone was there. Then they were not. That is my story. I am not a hero. I am just a man who listened long enough to know there was someone on the other side of that metal, and then drove away anyway. And no matter how far I haul freight, no matter how many miles stack up on my odometer, I have learned there are loads out here you never see on a manifest, and some of them are heavier than anything you can weigh on a scale. I used to laugh at the stories the old hands told about haunted highways and ghost riders. Long haul will do that to you if you let it, that is what I said. Your brain gets soft from too many miles and too little sleep, and suddenly every shadow on the shoulder is a phantom, and every bit of static on the radio is a voice from beyond. I do not laugh anymore. Not since I met her the second time. My name is Arabella, and I had not even been driving cross-country for 6 months when this happened. I signed on with a mid-sized outfit that loved putting new drivers on the routes nobody else wanted. At first, I took it as a compliment. They told me I was sharp, that I learned fast, that I did not complain. Later, I realized those were just polite ways of saying I was easier to risk. The route that broke me started like any other. Dispatch called late on a Tuesday, said they had a last-minute load out of the yard that needed to be in a mountain town 3 states over by dawn. Hazards of the job, they said. Tight deadline, good bonus. I pulled into the lot just before sunset. The trailer was a beat-up 48-footer, already loaded and sealed. Paperwork stapled to the back of the bill of lading with that red Rush stamp I had started to hate. "What is the catch?" I asked the night dispatcher as he slid the clipboard across the counter. He smirked. "Catch is nobody else wants that corridor. Windy, no chain-friendly truck stops past mile marker 90, and the only place to park is a couple of mom-and-pop lots older than you are. But you are a tough girl, right? Better than the old-timers." I should have noticed the way he avoided my eyes when he said that. I should have noticed how quickly he changed the subject to fuel stops and time windows. Instead, I signed, grabbed my keys, and told myself it was just another road. The first couple of hours were easy enough. Traffic thinned as I left the interstate, trading 6 lanes of glowing taillights for a 2-lane ribbon that snaked into low, dark hills. My dash clock ticked over to 11:17 p.m. as the last decent truck stop vanished in my mirrors. The sky was a flat black sheet, the kind you only see when you are far from city lights. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through it. The further I drove, the older everything looked. Gas stations with half-lit signs, motels with peeling paint and hollow windows. Occasional farmhouse lights up on distant slopes, the glow faint and lonely. The road climbed and twisted, carved into the side of the mountains in long, slow curves that made my shoulders ache from the constant steering corrections. Somewhere past mile marker 60, the fog rolled in. It did not drift gradually like I was used to seeing. One moment the air was clear, and the next my world shrank to a gray wall 10 truck lengths ahead. My high beams just bounced back at me, blinding white, so I killed them and crept forward on low. I was going 10 under the limit when I saw her. She stood on the shoulder just beyond the reach of my lights at first, a vague, narrow shape hunched against the cold. As I rolled closer, details sharpened. A young woman, maybe early 20s, in a torn denim jacket darkened by rain, bare legs under the hem, shoes that looked more like city flats than anything meant for climbing mountain roads. She did not have a bag, no phone in her hand, no thumb out. I told myself I would drive past. Company policy was clear about hitchhikers, and as a woman alone in the cab, I had even more reason to follow it. But when my headlights brushed over her face, I saw the way her teeth were clenched to keep from chattering and the gray tinge in her lips. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks. She looked like she had been standing there for hours. Against my better judgment, I eased onto the shoulder and hit my 4 ways. She did not come running like most people would. She stayed exactly where she was, watching my rig with a stillness that made my stomach twist. I had to lean across the passenger seat and crank the window down part way. "You need a ride?" I called out over the engine in the soft hiss of the rain. Slowly, she nodded. Up close, in the harsh fluorescent glare of my running lights, she looked wrong. Not monstrous or anything like that, just out of place. Her clothes seemed 5 or 10 years out of style. The patches on her jacket were for bands I knew, but the logos were older versions. Her eyes were a pale, washed-out blue, rimmed in red, like she had cried herself empty. "Where are you headed?" I asked. She looked past me, toward the road ahead. "Up through the pass," she said softly. "To the other side. That is where I am going." I hesitated for one more heartbeat, then popped the passenger door open from inside. "Just up in the seat, all right." Company would kill me if they knew I let anyone in the sleeper. She climbed in without a word. moving like she had done it 100 times before. She did not smell like wet clothes and cold skin. There was no smell at all. That did not register with me until later. I put the truck back in gear and eased us onto the road. For a while, we drove in silence, the wipers ticking a steady rhythm. The world outside nothing but endless gray. I stole glances at her when I could. She sat with both hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead, her shoulders rigid. The darkness in the cab seemed to cling to her, deeper around the edges, as if the dome light could not decide whether it wanted to reach her or not. "You got a name?" I finally asked, just to break the weight pressing on my chest. She hesitated, as if searching for it. "Mara," she said at last. The way she said it made me wonder if it was real. "I am Arabella," I offered. "You from around here, Mara?" Her fingers tightened a fraction. "I was," she said. "Before." "Before what?" I almost asked. Instead, she spoke again, voice barely louder than the whisper of the defroster. "Do they still talk on that thing?" She nodded toward my CB unit mounted above the windshield. "Sometimes," I said. "Not like they used to. Why?" "Do they still use Channel 19 at mile marker 142? She asked, eyes still fixed on the fog. Something in my gut went cold. "That is still a ways up," I said. "What is at 142? She did not answer. The next 10 miles felt like an hour. Once or twice I glanced at her and caught her eyes flicking toward the radio, like she was waiting for it to crackle to life. It did not. The night remained an endless tunnel of damp gray. The fog thinned as we climbed, breaking in ragged patches that showed glimpses of sheer drops and black trees clinging to impossible slopes. My hands ached from my grip on the wheel. The road straightened for a brief stretch along a high ridge, and a sign loomed out of the dark. Mile 98. I blinked. Something about that number made no sense. We had been driving long enough that it should have been further. I checked my dash clock. 1:03 a.m. I checked my odometer. The miles since I had picked her up were fewer than they should have been. "You sure you want to go all the way to the other side tonight?" I asked, nerves making my voice a little too bright. "There is a decent old truck stop around mile 110. Food is questionable, but they do not bother you if you nurse a coffee for an hour." She turned her head then, very slowly, and looked at me properly for the first time. Her eyes were not pale blue anymore. In the dashboard light, they looked almost gray, all the color drained out. "I tried to stop there once," she said. "They did not hear me." The skin on my arms prickled. I opened my mouth to ask what she meant. But in that exact moment, my headlights cut through another veil of fog and revealed an empty turnout on the right. No buildings, no signs, just a wide patch of gravel and the twisted remains of what might have been a guardrail further along. "Is that it?" I asked. She did not answer. When I looked back at the passenger seat, it was empty. The cushion was completely dry. Not a drop of damp where her jacket had been. No footprints on the floor mat. No stray strand of hair clinging to the seatbelt. The only sign that anything unusual had happened was the way my pulse hammered against my throat hard enough to make me nauseous. I drove the rest of the way through the pass, with both hands locked at 10 and 2, every nerve screaming. At some point, the fog thinned for good, and the sky above the peaks showed a faint line of gray, where dawn would eventually come. The town on the other side was still sleeping when I rolled into the receiver's lot. I made my delivery. I signed papers with a hand that shook just enough for the clerk to raise an eyebrow. When she asked if I was all right, I blamed the road and the weather. I thought about telling her I had picked up a girl who vanished from my cab without opening the door, I thought about asking if anybody had ever crashed around mile marker 142. I did not. I finished my day, crawled into my sleeper, and told myself I had hallucinated the whole thing from lack of sleep. I would have left it there if it had not been for the second night. 2 weeks later, dispatch put me back on the same corridor. Different freight, different destination, same pass, same night schedule. I almost refused it, but the memory had already started to blur around the edges like a bad dream. I told myself I needed to toughen up. I told myself nothing supernatural had happened. People do not disappear from passenger seats. The weather was clear that night. The sky was sharp and full of stars, the air so cold my breath plumed thick in the cab when I stepped in. I made it past mile 50, 60, 70 with nothing but the occasional pair of headlights in the opposite lane to break the monotony. My radio stayed silent. My hands unclenched gradually. At mile 89, I saw her again. This time she was not on the shoulder. She stood in the tiny dirt triangle where the on-ramp from a small service road met the highway, one arm wrapped around herself, the other hanging limp. Same jacket, same shoes, same washed-out face. She did not seem surprised to see my truck. She did not seem to see anyone else. I did not slow down. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator, as if speed alone could make her vanish. As I roared past, I dared a quick look into my passenger side mirror. She was gone. Not walking away, not shrinking in the distance. Gone. For several miles afterward, my mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe there had been two girls, dressed the same. Maybe the fog and the late hour the first time had made me misremember her face. Maybe it had been some weird trick of shadows this time. I clung to any excuse I could reach. I made it all the way to mile marker 139 before the fog returned. No slow creep this time. One moment I had clear stars and the sharp outlines of the peaks. The next I was inside a white tunnel again, my own headlights glaring back at me. The CB crackled. I had left it on out of habit, mostly for weather alerts and scale warnings. Channel 19 had been dead all night, just the occasional hiss of atmospheric noise. Now it spat a burst of static so loud it made me flinch. "Hello?" a girl's voice said. It was thin and warbling, like it was coming from very far away through a bad connection. My hand hovered over the mic. "Is someone out there?" the voice asked. "Can anybody hear us at mile marker 142? The truck seemed to shrink around me. The air in the cab turned dense, heavy, hard to breathe. I forced my fingers to close around the mic, thumb pressing the button down until the plastic creaked. "This is northbound tanker on the pass," I said. My voice shook. "I hear you. Who is this?" Silence. Just the soft hiss and pop of the open channel. I was about to repeat myself when the sign loomed out of the fog on my right. Mile 142. My eyes flicked between the road and the CB display. The channel number glowed steady and green. Ahead, the faint outline of a turnout took shape. That same empty gravel space with the broken guardrail. "Please," the voice came again, suddenly much clearer. We went off. We called. Nobody answered. "Is anybody there now?" My grip on the wheel turned my knuckles white. The turnout rushed toward me. As I passed it, the fog thinned just enough for me to see over the broken barrier. There was nothing there. No car, no fresh wreckage, no skid marks. Just a long drop into darkness and the faint glint of water or rock far below. "What is your location exactly?" I asked, clinging to protocol. "Repeat your location." "Mile marker 142. the girl whispered. "We have been calling. The fire will not stop. Please, it is so hot. I cannot get the door open. Is anyone out there now?" My vision tunneled. I could smell something then. Faint and impossible, like burned plastic and wet upholstery. My eyes flicked to the passenger seat. She sat there, soaked. Steam curled faintly from her jacket. Her hair hung in wet ropes. This time, there was a smell, sharp and metallic under the smoke, like blood and melted seat foam. Her head turned toward me in a jerky, unnatural way, as if her neck did not move quite right anymore. Her eyes burned like coals underwater. "You heard us," she said. Her lips barely moved. The sound seemed to fill the cab anyway. "You hear us now? Will you answer?" My foot slammed on the brake without conscious thought. The truck lurched, ABS chattering as 40 tons of steel and liquid fought physics on a mountain road. I forced myself to keep it straight, to ease off before I lost it completely. The rig slowed more, crawled. I could not look at her. I stared at the road, at the creeping numbers on my speedometer, at anything else. "I am hearing you," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "There is no wreck at 142. Not now, not anymore." For the first time, there was emotion in her voice, besides that horrid flat pleading. "Not anymore," she repeated. "That is what they told our mothers." The CB squealed. For a heartbeat, the cab filled with overlapping screams, not loud but distant. Countless voices tangled together in one long, rising note. Then it cut off. The radio went dead. The fog thinned like someone had opened a window. The seat beside me was empty again, but this time the cushion was soaked. Dark water, or something like it, had pooled in the fabric and was dripping slowly to the floor mat. The smell of burned plastic lingered for miles before finally fading. I made it off the mountain without crashing. I delivered my load. I signed what needed signing. I did not mention any of it to dispatch, to other drivers, to anyone. Who would believe that they had just heard an echo of something that happened years ago? That girl, and whoever else was with her, had died before I ever got my CDL. I tried to verify it, the way you do when you need to prove to yourself you are not losing your mind. Later, when I worked up the nerve, I searched the accident databases. It took a while, but I found it. A car full of college students, mostly girls, went off the side of that very pass one rainy night almost 15 years before I drove it. The report said the vehicle caught fire on impact. It noted that one of them managed to call for help, but the call dropped before she could give a clear location. By the time responding units found the wreck, it was too late. The witness statements mentioned that drivers later reported weird interference on their CBs around that mile marker for months afterward. Static that sounded like voices, pleas that nobody could quite make out. Eventually, people stopped talking about it. The road forgot, like it always does. I have not. I do not run mountain passes anymore. I stick to regional routes, flatland, short hops that get me home more nights than not. When I do have to roll out after midnight, my CB stays off. I tell other drivers it is because I am sick of listening to nonsense chatter. The truth is, I am afraid that if I turn it on at the wrong mile marker, I will hear her again. That thin, breaking voice asking if anybody can hear mile marker 142 now. And this time, if I answer, I do not know if they will let me keep driving away. People in this line of work like to pretend we are hard to scare. We brag about black ice and bad neighborhoods, and nod along when someone talks about hauling hazmat through a blizzard. But every old school driver I learned under had one rule that sounded more like a superstition than safety advice. Never haul a load when the shipper refuses to tell you what is in it. I knew that rule. I broke it anyway. Name is Vincent, and I came up in this business before everything was apps and dashboards. There were still jobs that came in on folded paper and phone calls from payphones. The night I learned to listen to my elders, I was down 3 days' pay from a canceled run and sitting in a truck stop booth nursing a coffee that tasted like hot pennies. That was when a guy I barely knew slid into the seat across from me and offered me the kind of money you're only supposed to get for hazmat. Simple haul, he said. Back roads, light traffic, no scales, cash on both ends. You interested or not? I asked him what any half-decent driver asks first. What is the freight? He smiled in a way that never touched his eyes. Crated equipment, oversized but light. You will not even feel it. All you have to do is pull it from the warehouse out in Fairview to a private drop past the county line. That is it. He pushed a slip of paper across the table with an address and a time. Midnight pickup. Mountain Back Road. No company name listed. Every warning bell in my head went off. Then I thought about my mortgage, my overdue repair bill, and the empty load board. I told myself equipment was equipment. I told myself I was too old to be scared of a few blank lines on a form. The warehouse sat at the end of a cracked 2-lane road, a squat concrete block half swallowed by trees. No sign on the front, just a rusted chain-link gate hanging half open. A single security light buzzed above the loading bay, throwing sickly yellow over the cracked asphalt. An old yard hand met me at the dock, a man with a face like dried leather and a cigarette that seemed glued to his lower lip. "You Vincent?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded once, then jerked his thumb toward the dark interior. "Back it up to door 3. Do not get out while we load. Do not look in the trailer once we close it. You haul straight through. No stops on bridges. You hear me?" It was such a weirdly specific rule that I almost laughed. "No stops on bridges. Got it. Anything else?" He took a long drag, studied my face, and then his voice dropped. "If you hear something asking real polite from back there, you did not hear it. You keep rolling. That is not for you." The hair on my arm stood up. "What exactly am I hauling?" He spat to the side. "You are hauling a crate. That is all you need to know. Take the money, run the miles, forget the address." I should have walked then. Instead, I backed up to door 3 and did what I was told. I sat in the cab with the engine idling while they loaded. I felt the slight jolt as something big, but not too heavy, settled over my axles. When they finished, the old man slapped the side of the trailer twice and handed my paperwork up through the window. No weight listed, no contents. Just an origin and a destination, and a line that said, "Special handling." The first hour was uneventful. I rolled through sleeping farm towns and past dark fields where only the red eyes of distant radio towers broke the horizon. The trailer felt wrong behind me, though. It did not pull like a normal load. The weight did not lean with the curves. It stayed steady, centered, like it was planted. Around 2 a.m., the road narrowed and the forest closed in tight on both sides. I killed the radio out of habit, conserving attention for the sharp bends and blind hills. That was when I heard the first sound from the trailer. It was not a thump or a rattle. It was a voice. Soft, clear, like someone standing just behind my seat. "Evening, Vincent?" I nearly jerked the wheel. The cab was empty. My mirrors showed nothing but my own headlights on the pavement and the faint white box of the trailer following obediently behind. "Who is there?" I snapped, anger covering the crack in my voice. A beat of silence. Then calmly, "Apologies. Did not mean to startle you. It has just been some time since I had someone to talk to." The voice did not echo. It was not coming through the CB. The unit was dark. It seemed to seep from the air itself. I remembered the yard hand's warning. "If you hear something, asking polite." My mouth went dry. "You are not supposed to be talking at all," I said. "Whatever you are." A low chuckle. "Whatever I am." That is fair. Once they called me other things. Names you might recognize from folk tales and roadside crosses. But now I am freight, same as anything else. My foot wanted to slam the brake. My hands wanted to spin the wheel and put us both in a ditch just to get away from that voice. I kept us steady. "What is in the crate?" I asked, unable to stop myself. "You have family, Vincent?" it asked instead. "Someone waiting at home? Someone who told you not to take this job?" Images flashed unbidden. My wife at the kitchen table frowning at the numbers. My brother telling me to stick to company freight. My father's voice from years back saying, "Never haul for a man who pays in cash and will not give you his last name." I did not answer. "I remember what it is like," the voice went on, conversational. "To walk under open sky, to see the way the moon changes shape. They do not let me see it anymore. Just darkness and wood and the stink of fear. You could change that." The road dipped, then rose toward a long steel bridge that arched over a black slice of river. The beams loomed ahead, a dark ribcage against the night. "Do not stop on bridges," the yard hand had said. I kept my speed, eyes locked on the far end. Halfway across, every hair on my body stood up. The air grew heavy, the way it does before a thunderstorm. "Let me look, just once," the thing inside the crate murmured. "Open the doors a crack when you reach the middle. You do not even have to look yourself. You can keep your eyes on the road. I will not touch you, I promise." Metal groaned around me. For a second I thought it was the bridge, but the sound came from behind. The trailer rocked just slightly, like something inside had shifted its weight for the first time. I clamped my jaws shut and drove. The center of the bridge felt like it stretched on forever. The voice's tone changed, a hint of frustration creeping in. "You are a stubborn man," it said. The last one was not. He opened the doors before we even left the yard. "Do you know what happens when you break the seal early? They blame the driver. They always blame the driver." I pictured the old hand's weathered face. There was a story in the way his fingers shook when he lit his cigarette. Maybe he had hauled this thing before. Maybe someone else had and never made it home. The engine coughed. Just once, a small hitch, enough to make the RPM needle dip. The headlights flickered. The wheel felt heavy in my hands. "I do not like bridges," the voice said, suddenly cold. "Too much water, too much falling. It reminds me of why they built the crate." The engine cut out. Every light on the dash died. In an instant, the only sound was the scream of steel and rubber as 40,000 pounds of truck and trailer coasted in dead silence over the hollow metal span. I had just enough momentum to clear the bridge. As the tractor rolled onto solid ground, everything snapped back to life. Lights blazed, the engine roared, the wheel jerked under my hands as power steering returned. "You keep me in the dark," it hissed then, no warmth left in it at all. "But I remember your kind. I remember your voices at the edge of the river. I remember your ropes." My teeth chattered. "I am just the driver," I said through them. "I did not put you there." "Yet yet here you are, it said softly, pulling the chains. The rest of the run was a blur. The voice did not speak again. The crate did not shift. The road wound on, mile after mile, until the drop point appeared. A gravel lane cutting off into the trees, a gate standing open like a mouth. A single light burned over a small concrete pad where someone had painted an X in fresh white. A man stepped from the shadows as I backed in, his silhouette tall and thin, hands folded neatly behind his back. He did not give a name. He did not offer a handshake. "You made good time," he said. "Any trouble?" I thought about telling him the engine had died on the bridge, that something in his crate had tried to talk me into opening the doors, that whatever was inside knew my name, my family, pieces of my past I had never told anyone on the road. "No," I said instead. "No trouble." He nodded, satisfied, and waved a couple of men out from the trees. They moved quickly, efficient, sliding jacks under the crate and rolling it to the edge of the trailer. I saw just enough to know the wood was old, bound with iron bands so pitted they seemed older than anything else there. Symbols had been burned into the side, half obscured by fresh paint. "Payment is in the envelope," the tall man said, handing me a thick, unmarked packet. "You did your part. Now forget this address." I left without looking back. A week later, I took a run that took me past that old warehouse again. Curiosity twisted my gut until I gave in and turned down the cracked road for a quick look. The gate was gone. The chain link was sagging in the dirt. Weeds grew up through the concrete where my truck had sat. The loading bays were boarded over, boards already gray with age. The security light was broken. Glass scattered on the ground like it had been that way for years. A for sale sign leaned at an angle near the entrance. Its phone number faded to nothing. I asked around. Nobody admitted to knowing anything. Some drivers shrugged and said the warehouse had been closed since before they got their licenses. One old-timer gave me a look I could not read and told me there are buildings that appear when they are needed, then slip away again when the deal is done. Now, whenever a broker offers me a fat envelope for a run with no contents listed, I say no. I do not care how tight my money is. There are some loads that are not meant to be hauled by anyone who wants to sleep sound at night. Every once in a while, though, I roll past some forgotten yard or shuttered dock and see just for a second the outline of a large wooden crate sitting alone in the shadows. It is never quite the same size, the markings are never quite identical, but I always feel the same thing, like something inside is holding very, very still, listening for the sound of an engine it recognizes, waiting for another chance at open sky. I have spent more nights in rest areas than in my own bed. You get used to the sameness of them. The sour coffee smell, the overbright bathrooms, the hum of vending machines that never quite shut up. That is why the night I pulled into the one that does not exist sticks out so clearly. It felt like walking into a place I had seen 1,000 times and realizing halfway through the door that all the exits had been moved. Name is Estelle. I haul mostly overnight, by choice. Less traffic, fewer idiots on their phones, more room to breathe. That also means I live on caffeine and whatever passes for food in the middle of nowhere. There was one run last winter, long stretch across 3 states with nothing but state highway after the first 200 miles. Dispatch had me on a clock that did not leave room for proper truck stops. So I planned to hit a rest area I had used before, about 10 hours in. The night was foggy from the start, that low clinging kind that eats your high beams. The closer I got to the mountains, the thicker it got, until my world narrowed to 2 white lines, a green glow on the dash, and the soft smear of my own headlights against the mist. I watched my clock, counted down the miles. By my log, I was bumping right up against when I needed to stop. I almost missed the sign. White reflective lettering, half swallowed by fog. Rest area 1 mile. I felt a wave of relief. I knew this place, or thought I did. Small loop, limited truck parking, older building but decent bathrooms. A familiar island in the dark. The exit ramp appeared out of nowhere, a gray mouth opening on the right. I signaled, eased down. Tires humming over the rumble strip as I dropped speed. The trees fell back to reveal the rest area's little kingdom of concrete and sodium light. Only it was not quite right. The layout was the same. One loop road, car lot on the left, truck slots on the right, a low cinder block building in the middle. But the building's exterior looked freshly painted, bright white with a blue trim I did not remember. The pavement was smooth, without the spiderweb cracks I expected. The old flickering lights had been replaced by tall, clean LED poles that washed everything in harsh, even brilliance. There were no other vehicles, not one. No cars with sleeping families, no other rigs idling, no patrol SUVs parked nose to nose. Just my truck, the empty slots, and the building, sitting there like it had been waiting. I told myself they had done renovations. Rest areas get facelifts sometimes. Maybe I had just not been through in a while. I pulled into a space, set my brake, and sat for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled. My GPS map still showed the blue dot right where I expected it, hovering over the little rest area icon. But the name field, where it usually said something like North Hollow Rest Area, was blank. Just a gray box. Athar. I chalked it up to a glitch, grabbed my keys, and stepped down. The air smelled clean. Too clean. No hint of diesel, no stale cigarette smoke. None of that acrid overlay that clings to any place trucks have sat for years. Just cold, damp air and the faintest trace of pine. Inside, the building looked brand new. The floors shone. The vending machines were modern, glass fronts lit bright, stocked with perfectly arranged rows of chips and candy. The bulletin board had neat rows of brochures, all straightened, all aligned. Not a single flyer for a lost dog, a local band, or an amateur locksmith. A man stood behind the information counter, mid-40s maybe, with a pressed polo shirt and a laminated badge that only said, "Attendant." He smiled as soon as I walked in. The smile went too wide, too fast, like he had been practicing in a mirror. "Long night?" he asked. "Something like that," I said, trying to sound casual. Did not realize they had fixed this place up. Last time I came through, the ceiling tiles were falling down in the ladies' room. His smile did not change, but something in his eyes flickered. "We keep it in good condition here," he said. "We like drivers like you to feel comfortable. You spend so much time out there after all. Drivers disappear all the time on these roads." The way he said disappear made the skin between my shoulders tighten. I laughed it off. "Yeah, well, I plan on staying in one piece," I said. "Rest break, then back on the clock." He watched me as I walked toward the restroom corridor. I could feel his gaze between my shoulder blades like a hand. I told myself I was being paranoid. Long hours, bad weather, an over-friendly attendant. Nothing more. The women's room was spotless. Too spotless. No graffiti on the stall doors, no crumbs or stray paper on the floor. Every sink gleamed. The fluorescent lights did not buzz or flicker. The mirror reflected me in harsh detail, dark circles under my eyes, hair shoved under a ball cap, that permanent highway squint. As I stepped into a stall, I heard the echo of my own footsteps bounce off the tile. Then, a half beat later, another set. The same rhythm, the same spacing, just not mine. I froze. The stalls were empty. I had checked. The room was silent except for the faint hum of air vents. Slowly, I shifted my weight on purpose, heel to toe. The sound came. My step, then a ghost of it, slightly delayed, as if someone were walking in perfect mimicry just out of sight. I held my breath. The echoes stopped. I finished as fast as I could, washed my hands, and avoided looking at the mirror this time. The door hissed closed behind me as I stepped back into the main area. The attendant was gone. The counter sat empty, his neat stack of pamphlets undisturbed. For the first time, I really looked at them. They were for attractions in states I knew, parks I had driven past, cities I had seen from the highway. But the photos were wrong. A skyline with one too many towers, a state flag with the colors slightly off, a beach that curved the wrong way when compared to the map in my head. My phone had full bars. I pulled it out, tried to open my map app again. The spinning circle went around and around, never loading. When I tried to pull up my messages, the screen showed no service for a split second before the bars popped back up. On the far wall was a framed map of the state, the kind you see in every rest area. Only the roads did not match what I knew. Major interstates bent in places they should have been straight. Whole towns I had made deliveries to were missing, replaced by names I did not recognize. A cold certainty sank into my stomach. I needed to leave. I walked back out into the parking lot. For a second, my heart jammed up into my throat. My truck was not where I'd left it. I'd parked 3 slots down from the end, nose facing the exit road. Now my rig sat closer to the building, at an angle, like someone had moved it, not quite straightened it out. The driver's door was half open, just enough to show a strip of darkness. The lot was still empty. No other vehicles. No sign of the attendant. The fog pressed just beyond the glow of the lights, thick and unmoving. "Hey," I called, more to prove I still had a voice than anything else. If this is some kind of joke, it is not funny. Nothing answered. No insects chirping, no distant highway noise. Just the faint hum of those perfect too bright lights. I made myself walk to the truck. Every step felt like it stretched. The distance between me and the cab never quite shrinking the way it should. When I reached the door, my hand shook on the handle. The cab interior was dark, but familiar shapes loomed where they should. Wheel, seats, my hanging air freshener. No one was inside. I climbed up, slammed the door, and locked it. Engine start. The dash lit, all systems green. My GPS map came back to life, blue dot blinking. The rest area icon was gone. The screen showed my truck sitting on an unbroken stretch of highway, no turnout, no side road. Heart pounding, I dropped it into gear and rolled toward the exit. As my headlights swept the building one last time, the windows looked different, darker. The bright lobby I had just been in was now just a shadow behind glass. The attendant sign over the counter flickered, then went out. By the time my tires hit the merge lane, the fog closed in again. I checked my mirrors, half expecting to see the lights of the place receding behind me. There was nothing, just trees and darkness where the rest area should have been. I drove for another 30 miles before I saw a gas station. It was old, dingy, exactly the kind of place I would normally avoid unless I was desperate. I pulled in anyway, just to stand under a different set of lights, to hear a different kind of humming. Inside, the clerk was scrolling his phone behind bulletproof glass. I bought a coffee that tasted like burnt mud and, on impulse, asked, "Hey, you know if they have renovated the rest area back up the highway? The one about 30 miles south?" He frowned. "We do not have a rest area on that stretch," he said. "Closest one is about 60 miles north. Been that way as long as I've worked here." I wanted to argue. I wanted to pull out my log and show him the timestamps, the gap where I had clearly been off the road. Instead, I just nodded and went back to my truck. Later, on my off days, I tried to find it on satellite maps. I zoomed in on every bend and curve of that highway. There were no structures where I had stopped. No loop, no building, no extra lights. Just trees and occasional gravel pullouts. Maybe it was all fatigue. Maybe I nodded off in the cab and dreamed every second of it. But when I run that route now, I plan my brakes carefully. I stop at crowded, ugly truck stops with greasy floors and flickering signs, surrounded by other rigs and bad coffee and noise. Because somewhere out there is a rest area that looks cleaner and safer and newer than it has any right to. A place where the brochures all show a world that is almost yours, but not quite. A place that would be all too happy for a tired driver to sit down, relax, and stay past the point where they can easily leave. And I have a feeling that if you stay past that point, the map does not lead you back to the same highways you remember. I tell people I am too old to be scared by shadows on the road. That is what they expect from someone who has been driving as long as I have. The truth is, what scares me now is not what I see out there, but what I hear. One voice in particular, a voice that should have gone silent years ago, but still slips through the static some nights when I am stupid enough to turn my radio on. My name is Malcolm, and I was not the one who vanished. That honor belongs to a younger driver we all just called Cal. He came up fast in the company, eager, hungry for miles. The kind of kid who would volunteer for every overnight run just to prove he could. We used to trade jokes over the CB between midnight and dawn, just to break up the loneliness. The night it happened was like any other, at least at first. Early fall, a storm crawling in from the west, rain sweeping in bands across a stretch of interstate we both knew by heart. I was about an hour ahead of Cal, loaded heavy with steel. He was behind me hauling light freight, his voice cutting in now and then as we checked road conditions for each other. "Road is slick in the dips," I told him. "Watch yourself around mile marker 80, it ponds there." "Copy that," he said. His voice was bright, but I could hear the fatigue under it. "You pulling off at that truck stop near 110? "That is the plan," I said. "Coffee and something pretending to be food." There was a pause. Then he said quieter, "Think I will push a little further. Feels like somebody has been on my bumper for an hour. I want some distance." I glanced at my mirror out of reflex. Even though I knew he was somewhere behind me on a road I had already passed. Habit. "Traffic is light tonight," I said. "Just let them pass." "That is the thing," he said. "They do not pass." He went on to explain that ever since he got back on the interstate after his last fuel stop, he had noticed a pair of headlights settle in behind him. Not riding his bumper aggressively, not flashing, not trying to overtake, just hanging back. Always at the same distance. When he sped up, they sped up. When he slowed, they slowed. "Probably just another driver pacing," I said. "People do that and do not even realize it." "Maybe," he said. "It is just weird. They had a chance to pass when I got stuck behind that slow mover, but they did not. Stayed right where they were. We left it there for a while. I talked him through a patch of bad crosswind on an exposed overpass, and for 20 minutes the conversation drifted to nonsense. Old jokes, gripes about dispatch, the usual. The storm rolled in, heavier, rain hammering the roof of my cab, wipers going full tilt. Then his voice came back, tighter this time. "Malcolm," he said, "you still got me?" "Still here," I answered. "What is up?" "They followed me into the rest area," he said. "Pulled up behind me, then just sat there. When I decided to leave, they left. Now they're right back where they were. Same distance, same lane." A shiver ran down my spine. I did not like the sound of that. "You get a look at them?" "No," he said. "High beams never come on. I cannot see the grill in my mirrors, just light, too bright to see past." I told him what any calm, rational person would. Take the next exit with a busy truck stop, park under the lights, go inside, and if the car hung around, call it in. Safety briefing 101. He agreed, said he would aim for a big, well-lit place we both knew about 20 miles up. "Probably nothing," he said, like he was trying to convince himself. "Maybe I am just tired." "Probably," I said. "But do not be a hero. If your gut says something is off, listen to it." The channel went quiet, just the soft hiss of rain-filled static. I hit my exit, rolled into my spot and shut it down for the night. Inside, over a bad cup of coffee, I kept one ear on the radio at the counter where other drivers were half listening to weather updates. About 20 minutes later, my handheld crackled. "Malcolm?" His voice was different, thinner, higher at the edges. "I am here," I said. "They did not take the exit," he whispered. I slowed down, signaled, got ready to pull off. Soon as the ramp came up, they drifted over to the left lane and kept straight. When I merged back on, they were waiting ahead, pulled to the side. As soon as I passed, they got back in behind me. The hairs on my arms lifted. "Call the state troopers," I said. "Right now. Use your hands free. Give them your mile marker. Let them know you think you are being followed." He hesitated. "I do not want to make a big thing if it is nothing." "If it was nothing, you would not be whispering," I snapped. "Do it. I will keep you talking." I grabbed my own phone, ready to call it in if he balked. On the radio, I heard him shifting in his seat, the faint clack of buttons. Before he could say anything else, a different sound came through, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like knuckles on metal. "It is closer," he said. "Lights are right up on the back of my trailer now. I cannot even see the road behind me, just white." "Get off at the next exit," I said. "Any exit. Take people around. Do not stop somewhere empty." Silence stretched. Then he whispered, "There is somebody standing in the lights." I felt my mouth go dry. "What do you mean?" "In the mirror," he said. "On the shoulder, just in the edge of the beams, like a silhouette. They are not moving. Arms are too long. I cannot see a face. It is just wrong." "Keep driving," I said. "Do not stop for anything. Troopers can meet you. Flash your hazards. Stay in the right lane." Another tap sounded over the radio. Closer. He sucked in a breath. "They are knocking on the doors," he said. "On the back of the trailer, you hear that? They are knocking." The sound came through more clearly then, transmitted by whatever open mic he had near him. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The same pattern, over and over. "It sounds like you," he said, voice breaking. "Do you hear it? It sounds like you, Malcolm, like you are back there asking to be let in." Something icy slid into my spine. Buddy, I am an hour ahead of you, parked at a diner. You know that. You're just hearing things." "They are saying my name," he whispered. "In your voice, in my mother's voice, in voices I do not remember, but feel like I should. They are asking so nicely. Please, Cal, let us in. It is cold out here. We have been behind you so long." The radio hissed. For a moment, all I could hear was the slam of my own heart in my ears. I opened my mouth to tell him to pull his tractor brake and stay put until law enforcement got there, even if it meant blocking a lane. Static roared. Then, very faint under it, I heard one last thing. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Just for a second." The channel went dead. I tried to raise him again and again. 10 minutes, 20. Other drivers chimed in, asking who I was calling, asking what was going on. I could not give them an answer that did not sound insane. Eventually, I called Highway Patrol myself, gave them his handle, his rough location, what I knew. They found his truck a couple of hours later, parked neatly on an empty turnout. Engine off, hazards off, all lights off, trailer sealed, no sign of forced entry. Inside the cab, logbook open on the dash, coffee still warm in the holder, driver's door locked from the inside. No sign of Cal. Officially, they listed him as missing. There were posters for a while, company meetings about safety, about reporting suspicious behavior. People whispered theories in the break rooms. Some said he parked, walked away into the woods, and decided not to come back. Some said foul play, carjacking gone wrong, abduction. I never told them about the knocks that came through the radio, about the way his voice shifted from annoyed to terrified to strangely calm, about that last "okay," spoken like someone opening a door that they knew they should keep closed. Now, when I run that stretch of highway, I keep my CB off. I tell myself it is because I am sick of chatter, sick of nonsense, sick of listening to kids like Cal pretend they are invincible. But some nights, when the rain is coming down hard and the road feels too empty, my hand drifts toward the knob. Twice, I have given in and turned it on for company. Twice, within a few minutes, Channel 19 has filled with faint, distant static that almost shapes itself into a familiar voice. "Malcolm, you still got me?" Both times, I have reached out and shut the radio off so hard the plastic clicked. There are some things you do not answer out here, some knocks you pretend you never hear. Because if he is still out there, somewhere between the white lines and the dark, I am not sure he is looking for help anymore. I think he might just be looking for someone to ride behind. You hear a lot of nonsense in truck stop diners. Haunted mile markers, phantom hitchhikers, cursed bridges that hate the sound of Jake brakes. Most of it is just talk to pass the time. That is what I thought about the stories of the Calderwick Bridge until I tried to prove everyone wrong. I used to be proud of being that kind of stubborn. Name is Phoebe, and I run mostly regional, in and out of the same 3 states, hauling everything from construction materials to groceries. There is this old 2-lane bridge on one of my regular routes. A narrow steel thing with a sagging spine and a river underneath that looks more like black glass than water at night. The locals swear it is bad luck for trucks. They say if you cross it loud, it takes something from you. Most drivers just roll over quiet because why not humor a story when it costs nothing? The first time I heard the full version, I was in a greasy spoon near the yard, cradling bad coffee and trying to wake up for a midnight run. An old-timer named Percy leaned over from the next stool and nodded at my route sheet. "You running 47 tonight?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Bridge and all. Why?" He smirked. "Do yourself a favor and kill the Jake on the span. Do not lay on the horn, and for God's sake, do not stop dead center to enjoy the view. I rolled my eyes. What happens if I do? Phantom toll collector jumps out? You will not feel anything right away, he said. That is the problem. You will just cross loud and cocky, and somewhere down the line, something gets taken. Maybe your nerves, maybe your sleep, maybe someone you care about. He stirred his coffee. Bridge hates noise. It remembers the last time a truck screamed across it. I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and went back to his breakfast. The other drivers nearby avoided the subject, like they had all agreed not to talk about whatever incident started the superstition. I walked out of there feeling like they had all decided I was too green to be let in on the joke. That irritated me more than it should have. A week later, dispatch put me on that route for a pre-dawn grocery run. Clear sky, light fog, no traffic. As I rolled onto the county road that led to the bridge, Percy's warning came back to me. I could hear his voice in my head. Kill the Jake, roll quiet. Instead, I flipped the switch the other way. By the time the steel lattice of the bridge loomed out of the dark, I had my engine brake ready. The river below was just a broad strip of darker black, no lights to catch the surface. The first tires hit the metal plates with a hollow clang, and for a second, the old bridge sang under me. I downshifted hard and let the Jake roar. The sound ripped out of my stacks and bounced off the steel like a beast in a cage, sharp and ugly in the narrow space. I even gave the air horn a quick blast, more to prove a point to myself than anything. There was nobody else around. No houses close enough to annoy. Just me, my truck, and the bridge. Halfway across, everything stopped. Not the truck, not exactly. The engine cut out so fast, it felt like I had driven into a wall of silence. The roar died mid-note. Every light on my dash went black. The radio croaked and went dead. Even the rattle and hum of the cab stilled. For one sickening instant, I coasted in absolute quiet. The only sound the faint rush of rubber on steel and my own breath hitching in my throat. I have lost engines before. It is loud. There are clicks, warnings, relays snapping, alarms. This was none of that. This felt like someone had pressed mute on the world. The air went heavy, like a storm was about to break right overhead. The hairs on my arms stood up inside my jacket. My hands clenched the wheel hard enough to hurt as I steered, using nothing but muscle and memory to keep the rig centered on the span. In that silence, something whispered right next to my ear. "You are not the first to scream at me," it said. "You are just the latest." The voice was not male or female. It sounded like wind through steel, like tires over wet metal, like all the sounds a bridge hears ground down into one thin thread. I could not tell if it was inside the cab or outside. It felt like it was in my bones. I tried to speak, to curse, to pray. My mouth worked, but I could not hear my own voice. My pulse thundered against my ribs. The world shrank to the reflective paint on the guardrails, my headlights dim in the fog, and that whisper. Do you know what it sounds like? It slid on. When they do not slow down, when they hit the slick and the load shifts and the trailer jackknifes. I do. Images slammed into my head, unbidden. A truck sideways, sparks spitting as metal tore into metal. A trailer railing against guardrails not meant to hold that much weight. A cab swinging out over the drop for a heartbeat too long. They screamed, it said. They laid on the horn, as if the river cared. They dragged their cargo across me like a knife. Then they fell. Their noise is still in me. I have not forgotten. The far end of the bridge seemed to creep closer in agonizing inches. I could feel my rig losing momentum. If the power did not come back before I hit the last third, I would stop dead. 40,000 pounds of useless metal perched over a drop into black water. "Quiet," the voice breathed. "That is all I ever wanted. A little respect. You gave me your brakes instead." Something touched the back of my neck then. Not physically, not in a way that left a mark, but like cold fingers of air slipped right through my skin. Sudden, sharp flashes of my life stuttered through my mind. My father teaching me to drive stick in an empty lot. My brother laughing as he jumped into a river on a summer afternoon. My mother standing on a porch, hand up to block the sun as she watched a much younger me pull away in a borrowed rig. For a second, I could not remember their faces clearly. They blurred, like photographs left out in the rain. Panic surged. I tried to shout, and this time, I heard a strangled sound force its way out of my throat. As soon as I heard my own voice, the world snapped back. The engine coughed, then roared. Dash lights flared on. The radio spat a burst of static and resumed whatever late-night talk it had been playing. The usual rattle and vibration of the cab came flooding back. The sudden noise was almost painful. I was 3 truck lengths from the end of the span. I did not touch the brake again until I was well clear of the bridge and back on regular pavement. My hands shook so badly, I had to pull into a gravel turnout and sit there with the engine idling, both palms flat on my thighs. The urge to vomit came in waves. When I tried to bring up the memories that had blurred, a face here, a laugh there, they came back, but slow, like they had to fight through something. There was a weight in my chest that had not been there before, a sense that if I had stayed silent just a little longer, something would have slipped and never quite found its way back. I told myself it was just a power glitch. Moisture, bad wiring, old infrastructure. Maybe I had micro-dosed and dreamed the voice, the missing pieces of memory. That is what I told the mechanic when I had him check every line and fuse that week. He found nothing wrong. Several days later, a driver from another company rolled through the same diner where I had heard Percy's warning. He was pale, his hands trembling around his cup. "You hear about the wreck on the county road?" he asked whoever would listen. "Guy hauling livestock. Engine died right in the middle of the Calderwick Bridge, lost all power. By the time he got it lit again, his trailer had slid. He went through the rail." The room went quiet. One of the older drivers muttered a prayer. Percy caught my eye and held it for a beat too long. "That bridge takes what it is owed," he said later, when we were alone outside. "You can cross it quiet, show some respect, and maybe it lets you be. You make it scream, it remembers that too. Sometimes it takes something small. Sometimes it takes a whole rig." "Then why does anyone still use it?" I asked, anger covering the tremor in my voice. "Because it is there," he said. "Because the detour is longer and fuel is expensive, and everyone thinks the bad luck belongs to someone else. I still run that route. There are not many choices if you want to keep the work. But every time I see the steel skeleton of that bridge rise out of the fog, my hand goes to the Jake switch on reflex. I flip it off long before my tires touch the metal. I roll as quiet as I can, no horn, no brake chatter, engine barely more than a hum. Under my breath, where no one can hear me, I whisper, "Easy now, just passing through." And somewhere under the vibration of my tires and the murmur of the river below, I swear I can feel it listening. There comes a point in this job where the miles all start to blur together. Same ramps, same motels, same ugly orange streetlights bleeding into the cab at 3 in the morning. After a while, you start to wonder if you're looping the same stretch of road over and over and just telling yourself it is different. I used to joke about that. Then I took a detour one night and found a place that made me think maybe the road loops you. Name is Lawrence, and I am closer to hanging up my keys than I am to my first solo run. I have hauled through every kind of weather this country can throw at a person. I have broken down on mountain passes and in desert heat. I have slept in cabs, cheap motels, and on break room couches. Through it all, I kept one thing straight in my head: where I was, where I was going, and how to get back. The night that changed, there was a wreck up ahead on my usual interstate. I was running late already, hauling dry goods on a tight window, when the overhead sign started flashing about a major pileup near mile marker 180. Traffic alerts pinged my dash. My GPS chimed and suggested an alternate route to save time. Normally, I do not trust those suggested detours. Half the time they send you down roads that are fine for cars and hell for a 53-footer. But I could hear the tone in the dispatcher's voice from earlier, that edge that says, "We really need this one on time." I looked at the clock, looked at the little highlighted path curving off onto a state highway, and thought, just this once. The exit ramp for the detour was one I had never taken before. A narrow lip of concrete leading down into darker trees. The interstate's steady white roar faded behind me as I merged onto a two-lane that felt older than everything else around it. The asphalt was smoother than I expected, though, and the shoulders were clean. The GPS dot stayed centered on its blue line, reassuring as a heartbeat. About an hour in, my fuel gauge dipped lower than I liked. I had expected to top off before the pileup, but with the detour, I had missed my usual truck stop. I started watching the roadside harder, looking for gas signs, convenience stores, anything. The forest pressed in on both sides, heavy and dark. I passed a couple of dark farmhouses, a closed-up diner, a gas station with boards over the windows. Right when I was about to turn around and risk backtracking, a sign appeared in my headlights. White background, red letters smudged with age, Calderwick's Truck Haven, 1 mile. Underneath, in smaller print, diesel, hot meals, showers, open 24 hours since 1954. I had been running this region for 30 years. I had never heard of Calderwick's. I told myself it was just an old mom-and-pop place that never bothered with billboards on the interstate. There are still pockets like that, where the world forgets to update. My low fuel light blinked on. Decision made. The driveway came up quick, a sharp right between leaning pines. I eased the rig in, tires crunching over gravel, and the trees fell back to reveal a truck stop dropped straight out of a different decade. The main building was long and low, with a peaked roof and a neon sign that buzzed Calderwick's in red and blue. The diner windows glowed warm. The pumps out front had analog dials and faded stickers. A handful of trucks and cars were scattered around the lot, all of them older models but in good shape, like they had rolled off a lot 20 years ago and never left. Relief washed through me. Light people, the promise of hot food and fuel. I pulled up to the diesel island, killed the engine, and climbed down. The air smelled like fried food, cold air, and the faint tang of fuel. Comfortable smells. Familiar. Inside, the diner was busy for that time of night. A few booths were filled with families whose clothes looked a little out of time. Plaid jackets, high-waisted jeans, a kid in a t-shirt for a band that had broken up before I got my CDL. A couple of drivers sat at the counter, hunched over plates. The The music on the overhead speakers was some old rock tune I had not heard outside of classic stations in years. A waitress approached with a pot of coffee, smile already on. She wore a pale blue uniform dress, white apron, hair pinned up in a style my mother used to wear when she was young. "Top you off, hun?" she asked. "Sure," I said, sliding into a booth. "How long you folks been here?" "Sign said since '54. Her smile widened, like I had told a good joke. "Long as I can remember," she said. "You have been through before, Lawrence. You know that." My hand tightened around the menu. "Do I?" I asked. She tilted her head, studying me like I was messing with her. "Of course. You and your daddy, back when you were running teams, sat right there." She tapped the edge of the booth. He liked the peach pie. My father had been dead for 10 years. He and I had indeed run together for a while in the early days. We had eaten in a lot of little places that did not exist anymore. I was certain this was not one of them. "Long time ago," I said slowly. "You must be mixing me up with someone else." She just poured the coffee. "You truckers always say that," she said lightly, "like the road does not remember you." The food came hot and fast. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes that tasted like something from a Sunday kitchen, not a microwave. As I ate, the hum of conversation around me felt off. Not wrong exactly. Just a half beat behind what my ears expected, like a dubbed movie a fraction out of sync. When I glanced around, I caught snippets. They paved over the old road after the washout. Still doing that loop, back and forth, back and forth. He will be back through. They all come back through. I checked my watch. I could have sworn I had only been sitting for maybe 20 minutes. But the hands showed almost an hour had passed. My truck clock agreed. The low fuel worry prickled again. "Can I get my fuel squared away?" I asked the waitress when she came back by. "Need to get rolling." "Already taken care of," she said, nodding toward the window. "Pump reset as soon as you pulled in. Tank is full. You just settle your check and get on your way. Long drive ahead tonight." That did not make any sense. I had not swiped a card, had not flipped a switch. I had not even put the nozzle in yet. But when I went back out, the gauge sat near full, the pump numbers at 0, like I had never even touched them. I went back in to pay. The man behind the register had one of those faces you feel like you have seen in 100 places. Middle-aged, thinning hair, kind eyes that were a little too sharp. "Running hard this week?" he asked, ringing me up without looking at the buttons. "Feels like I have been running forever," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. He chuckled. "Road will do that. But you always end up back where you started, one way or another." The total on the small green display made my heart stutter. It was less than I had paid for a meal and a shower 20 years ago. When I held out my card, he shook his head. "Cash only," he said. "Same as always." I do not like handing over cash on the road, but the bill in my pocket felt heavy. I paid, took my receipt, and glanced at it. The date was smudged. The year looking more like a 4 and a 7 than anything in the 21st century. "Hey," I said. But when I looked up, the man had already turned away, talking to the next customer. Back in the cab, I sat for a minute with my hands on the wheel. My phone showed a strong signal, but when I tried to pull up my maps, the app froze, then dumped me back to the home screen. The GPS unit mounted on my dash still showed my blue dot on a road, but the name of the truck stop was not there. Just a gray blank where Calderwick's should have been. I pulled out anyway. The lot lights washed over my mirrors, then dropped away as I turned onto the narrow access road. Trees closed in. For a moment, in the reflection, the building looked different. Dark windows, sign unlit, a couple of the pumps missing. Then the bend took it out of sight. The highway I merged onto felt the same as the one I had left. But my clock told a different story. I had lost more than 2 hours. There was no way the stop, the meal, and the fuel could have eaten that much time. No way. And yet there it was. I made my delivery late, but not late enough to lose the load. Dispatch grumbled and moved on. On my reset day, out of stubbornness or fear or both, I went online and tried to find Calderwick's. I found an obituary for a man named Calderwick who had run a truck stop off a state highway back in the 70s. Place had burned in an electrical fire in 1981. 3 people dead. No one had rebuilt. The photos in the article showed a sign almost identical to the one I had driven under, half melted and blackened. There were no recent business listings. No satellite images showed a building where I remembered it. Just a gravel patch slowly being reclaimed by weeds. These days, when the GPS chirps about a faster route, I think twice. I stick to the roads I know, even if it means crawling through traffic. On the nights when I am so tired the lines start to shimmer, and the thought of a hot meal in a quiet diner sounds like heaven, I keep one eye on the signs. Every now and then, out of the corner of my vision, I swear I see Calderwick's truck haven flicker by on an old, leaning post, arrow pointing down some side road I have never taken. My hands tighten on the wheel, and I keep going. I am not afraid of getting lost anymore. Not the regular kind of lost. It is the other kind that worries me. The kind where you stop somewhere that feels more like a memory than a place. And when you leave, you are not entirely sure the world you roll back into is exactly the same one you left. I have spent my life finding my way back home. I am too close to the end to risk ending up somewhere the maps forgot.